Welcome to Old New Borrowed Blue, the Blue Room podcast that looks at all those things we love about this thing of ours called Everton. Each episode, I speak to an Evertonian about their favourite former player, favourite current player, player they'd have loved to have seen at Everton, and their favourite Evertonian or favourite thing about Everton. Old New Borrowed Blue. I am joined this week by Warren, Blue Room regular, sometime mailbag host, and all-round top fella. Warren, how's it going?
Oh, Les, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm all good, mate. I'm currently enjoying my first week of my summer holidays off work, so I'm very, as you know, as I told you about, filled it in about what happened at the weekends with me and finishing on the last day of work. I'm good, mate. I'm very good, and thank you for having me on. I've listened to a lot of the series, and it's a great idea for a show, and it's been brilliant listening to some of the answers and some of the thoughts and feelings people have had about our great club, and it's a pleasure to be on and being involved myself.
Yeah, it is from mate. It is a nice thing to just talk about stuff that we like about the
Yeah.
club. There's no PSR, there's no moaning about anything. It's just all stuff we like generally. But before we get into your choices, I always like to see what people's first game was. So either the first game you went to, first game you remember, or both, whatever.
Well, this is very Everton this because my first game, I remember it well. It was November 1993 and we lost 3-0 at home to Queen's Park Rangers. I was just starting to get the football bug as you do when you're that age. You want all my mates were into it, all the kids were into it, and being in Liverpool and stuff and whatever, and being around Merseyside, you're kind of born into it anyway. And my mum at the time, Everton did an offer where if you took your brother or something, or you took a sibling, there was like a special deal. So she got all dressed up to make herself look younger, so she could get me in a little bit cheaper. And yeah, if I remember rightly, I think I sat in the paddock, and this was, well, this Les, like back then, attendances weren't great, not like they are now. I think I'd
No,
looked before, and I think it was about 20,000 there at
I
the
was gonna
game
say
that
I was
day.
gonna say we get anything between like 13 and 20 odd thousand at games there.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a birthday present. It was not long after my seventh birthday, and yeah, actually just before we come on, I had a little Google of the stats and stuff that day, and I found video highlights of it, and from the highlights, a couple of minutes I watched, the absolutely tore us apart. Bradley Allen got a hat trick, I believe.
Well,
Just looking at, yeah,
that's what I was gonna say because I remember that game well. I think I would have been in the lower Bulls for that one, and QPR in that black and red kit.
yeah, yeah,
And the mad thing about it was Les Ferdinand didn't score because he seemed to score every game against us, and
yeah.
he didn't score. And Bradley Allen knocked three in, but he battered us. It was terrible. They were decent at the time, QPR.
Yeah, they had Trevor Sinclair. I think they had I don't know, I don't think it was Tony. They had a Daly as another winger who tore us apart as well. And Ray Wilkins was in his swan song, and he was just orchestrating everything in the middle. So it was I didn't take it to heart as much when I was seven, and then that season was the season we almost went down, and I started going quite regularly after that. I don't know if anyone remembers. People may remember this who were my age, but down at the pit in on Scotty Road, they used to do a thing where you could go and do a coaching session in the morning, and then you pay your money, you get your pizza for lunch, and then they'd walk you up to the ground and you'd go and watch the game. And it was only like a fiver at the time. So we used to go quite regularly through that scheme. It was like an
That's
Everton
ace.
community thing. Yeah. And then they must have stopped it after attendance started rising, and they realised, I think it was a way to try and get the younger fans in and the kids in and stuff. But it was great. You should look forward to every Saturday because you go and have a kick around beforehand, and then you go the match afterwards. But yeah, I do remember going to the Wimbledon game later that season, and I think that was the first time as a kid when I really found out about what it meant to people, because there was people around me, grown men crying. And as a kid, you're not used to seeing
Yeah.
men cry, and especially, it's that thing, isn't it? And seeing men crying, how we were at half time. And I remember thinking, oh, we never score long range goals. Everton, all these other teams score long range goals. And then Barry Orn pops up with that one. So yeah, that was when I was fully cemented in it all that season. And yeah, that's where it all started for me.
And if ever there was a player who was unlikely to score a long range goal, it was Barry Orn. He couldn't
Exactly.
even hit a long range pass at that point.
No, no, and it was just so, up the East Lancs, Man United were dominating everything, and they just had, flair players galore. And as a kid, you want your team to be the best,
Yeah.
and you just wanted somebody who was a bit of magic or a bit of skill, and we didn't have any of that really. I always remember because I started doing that thing as well. Can I watch match of the day? Can I stay up late and watch match of the day? And every time I'd watch it, I'd always see other teams scoring long range goals, and we never seemed to. And then up popped Barry Orn last day of the season and effectively kept us up. So yeah, what a first season to support the Blues, but it didn't put me off. It kept me there, and yeah, I'm still here 30 whatever years later.
That was a crazy season. And what you just said there kind of leads us nicely into your choice for old to your favourite former player. Player who was no stranger to it in a long range screamer.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what? I was torn because I listened to Pete McFarlane on here with you, and he said about Duncan, and Duncan was a big hero for me as well. People I've mentioned it a couple of times on the show, but I've got a bit of a my backstory. So I actually, as you know, and as listeners know, I live down in Bournemouth at the moment, and a lot of my life's actually been down here. So when I was secondary school age, high school age, we moved down here, and I went to high school down here. And I always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to move back to Liverpool and back to Merseyside. And I was fortunate enough to do that when I started uni, so I moved back for university and I was back home then for a good 10 years, 12 years, and then I'm back down here now again for work. So when people ask me about where did they go to school and whatever, I always feel a little bit like a phony because I'm like, well, I am from Liverpool, I promise you, but I spent a lot of my life down here. So, but when I did come back and live back in Liverpool, went to university and whatever, that's when I renewed or got my season ticket again, and I've had it ever since. And one of the players, my favourite, it's well, I'll come out with it. It's Leighton Baines. I just absolutely love the bloke. I think when he first came, he struggled to get in, but I just liked the look of him. You know, sometimes when you look at a player, I always think like the balance of a player and
Yeah.
how they move across the pitch rather than actually looking like the chugging or he just glided Baines. And even when he wasn't inside, I always thought that about him. And I liked the look of him when he was at Wigan as well. And there was rumours when he was at Wigan that he was a blue and a local lad and all that. So obviously that gets you on side straight away too. And when he started making the team and getting in more regularly, he just turned into a real focal point. I mean, that back four under Moyes, we were so unfortunate that we didn't have money to spend like some of the other clubs did to really kick on. Because at the time when we had, Les Scott, Yobo, Baines as well, we really did have a cracking side, and it's a shame we could never, as I say, kick on. But what I loved about him, it's not just that, I was left-footed when I played as well. I used to be half decent back in the day, not anymore, but I loved that he was left-footed. I loved that he got forward. I loved the link up he used to have with PNR. I mean, we still haven't really replaced that now, the Baines PNR link. And I don't know what it is, Les, about him. I just always thought if he wasn't a professional footballer, he'd be here with me and my mates now. Do you know, he just had that kind of thing about him, not so much man of the people, but just he was just seemed like a completely normal bloke
He
nowadays.
just seems sound, doesn't he?
He
It's like
just seemed
football
like,
couldn't be all and end all. He had
yeah,
other interests, and he was banging into his music, did his photography. Football was like a career, and he clearly loved it, and clearly does because he stayed in it. And
mm,
he's coaching now, so you've got to love it for that. But he wasn't one dimensional, was he? As you say, he's someone who you could have thought, yeah, could go out for a bevy with him easy.
absolutely more than anyone really. And I think I just the group of mates I've still got, but I had, and during that point as well when he was prime in the side, I was going home and away every week without fail, and all the lads I used to go with, I just always thought he's one of us. Like he just felt like one of us, and I think as well, he turned. Let's face it, he turned down probably many chances to leave and go and win trophies, and he ended up staying, which to his detriment in terms of winning something. But obviously for us as fans, I know we talk a lot about on this show about who's an Everton legend, who isn't an Everton legend. And Baines might not fit into that category for a lot of fans. For me, he does, just because I thought he represented Everton and he
Yeah,
represented what I felt about Everton. And that kind of thing's important to me. So he's my favourite. Arteta was the best player I think I've probably seen in a blue shirt just in terms of ability. We fortunately didn't have him, a lot longer than we did. Duncan was my childhood hero, living down south when everyone supported Man United, Arsenal, whoever, the other lot. They all had, Shearer was in his pomp and Cantona and every other team had a superstar. We didn't. And Duncan sort of, if he didn't want to, took on that role really, and he was
Yeah.
he was at least someone who fight for us. So he was my childhood hero, but you know, as an all round, just all time Evertonian, yeah, Leighton Baines.
Yeah, great shouts. As you say, he probably could have gone anywhere, sort of around what 2014, around then.
Mm.
He was probably he was statistically up there with like as the best left back in Europe, I think,
Well,
wasn't he?
he just picked Ashley Cole, hadn't he, into the England team as a regular. No, Ashley Cole was probably receding a little bit at that point, but even still, I mean, he was pushing Cole all the way for there was
Yeah,
about 2 or 3 seasons from about 2011 on 2010, 2011 onwards. In fact, I think the FA Cup final season 2009 was probably his best. It's not his best, but his breakout in terms of
yeah.
I'm going to be playing every week. And then for about 3, 4 years after that, I know we're biased, but I don't think there was a better left back in the league or possibly in Europe.
Well, yeah, and I'd agree. And I think the most frustrating thing for me was that non-England call up in 2010, when basically his comments got misconstrued that he'd like to stay home with his family because it's like,
Mm.
well, who wouldn't? But he wasn't saying, I don't want to go. And it just seemed to be used as an easy get out to not take him.
Yeah.
And thing he got taken from Villa, didn't he?
Oh, the other cockfight, what's his
Just,
name?
just guy now.
Warnock.
Neil Warnock. Stephen
Yeah,
Warnock. Neil
Stephen
Warnock would have
Warnock.
been better. Stephen Warnock got taken instead of him, which is
Yeah.
just, it's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Mm. It is,
But
but
yeah,
it was again, it was you would have loved him to go, but I think he was the type of character. I think he would have loved to have gone, but I don't think ultimately it would have affected them probably as much as some other players. So it was
yeah.
to our advantage in the end anyway.
Yeah, most other players would have angled for a move probably away from
Yeah,
Everton. Not getting
yeah.
into England, so I'm getting off. I just on him being left-footed as well, which leads us into the next player. There's something magic about a left-footed player, isn't there? I
Mm.
know. Like obviously, you being left-footed, you'd say that anyway. But I always think that when left-footed players score, take penalties, do anything, just something seems better about it. There's something a
I
little bit more magical, I think.
Do you know what? I remember, and I probably should have used this for an answer later on. He's just come to my head now, but I remember the first proper football experience or the football I had of watching on TV and remembering it well was the World Cup in USA. And being a young kid, it was on very late. So I didn't watch a lot of it, but bits. And I just remember Georgie Hadji's goal for Romania. And at the time, I just started playing, and someone said to me, "Oh, you want to keep practicing you're left-footed. There's not many of you about." And I remember seeing Hadji scoring a wonder goal for Romania. And
Yeah, I
then
remember that.
all through like time then, all of, as you say, all the sort of Messi, Maradona, they all seem to be left-footed. Do you remember for years as well in this country, because when England used to play the 4-4-2 all the time, and it was always that who've we got who's a winger who can play on the
Oh
left, and
yeah,
it just never seemed to exist. And yeah, but a lot of people when I was a kid and I used to play always said to me, left footers, left foot, and it was something of a novelty to be left footed. So I had that to my advantage, if you like. But yeah, there's something about left footed players down the years. They just seem to have that. I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's a science behind it or what, but every one of them seems to be able to bend the ball and whip a ball in and get
yeah.
curl on it. And there's just something magical. And again, Baines added to that, and we've had other left footed players, down the years as well. But yeah, I mean, wish Michalenko was a bit more of the traditional left footer, but he's solid enough. We'll hold on to him.
He is. He'll do.
Yeah.
So your choice for your favourite current player, another left-footed player, as anyone who's seen him kick with his right will probably attest to. He's not the
Yeah.
best on it, but your choice is
Jordan Pickford. Yeah, I think we've been starved, haven't we, in the last few years of liking players in the Everton team. There's been a few who we say, well done to, and we've enjoyed and we've liked, but I think particularly the run of form we've been on down the last 4 years, there's been a lot of comments, particularly online, about how they're not a very likable team, and a lot of the players don't seem to have any pride at wearing the
not
shirt.
allowed
And
to things and everything. Yeah,
yeah, the same sort of shouts you get when you're in a poor team, and that's completely understandable. But I've gone for Pickford just because I think a number of reasons, really. I mean, I was close to picking Tarkovsky. I just like the way he's a bit old fashioned, like old school defender, and he's one of the he's we like a tackler, don't we? We like someone who puts the body on the line, and I think he does that regular that we don't really mention it much anymore because we just come to expect it off him. Obviously, Brandthwaite is just an exceptional young kid, and it looks like we're going to possibly keep him for another year, which is fantastic, and it'll be great to see how he keeps developing. But I just think I talked about this on one of the weekly shows about goalkeepers, and they're so hard to replace. And going back to the first game we talked about earlier, and in that Everton side, we had the great Neville Southall, who for me is up there, one of the greatest players we've ever had. And I don't think we ever really replaced Neville until we got Pickford. I know I know we had Tim Howard for a long time, and I know Nigel Martin did superb for us, but I think Howard probably didn't. Howard was a bit Marmite, he some weeks he was great, and other weeks he'd make some really poor errors of judgment. And Nigel Martin, as I said, was only a short-term thing. And I think since Neville Southall, we've never really replaced and had a top goalkeeper. And Pickford started slow. I mean, I know I say that, but he got player of the year in his first year. But in terms of gaining our trust and gaining trust
Yeah.
of the Everton fans, he definitely started slow. And I've said this before on this show, and I'll say it again. But the game for me where it all changed for him was the Newcastle away. We were 2-0 up and we ended up losing the game 3-2. And his head went a little bit. And I think since then, there's been a really big effort made from him as well, I have to say, not just those at the club, but from him to get the mental side of the game correct and get the preparation and all that correct. And he's made some unbelievable saves in the last few years. And he's just been, I think, I know we don't downplay it, but I don't think we can really underestimate the value of him to us in the last few seasons. I don't think it's too far to say that without him, we would be a championship, if not League One club by now. The save against Chelsea the other year, the double save where he's tipped it onto the post, it's come back out. I can't remember who the Chelsea player was, but they've got it back in. And it's somehow he's got across the goal and tipped it wide. Just absolutely incredible.
There was loads towards the end of last season as well, wasn't there? He seemed to pull one out every week towards the end of last season somehow.
He did, and it was there was the Fulham one. I don't know if you remember the Fulham one last season.
Tipped it over.
He tipped it over, and it wasn't made a big deal out of. But for me, it was just an outstanding save. And the whole thing with England, I mean, I don't think we've ever had an England number one as our keeper, have we? And I think the whole thing with him keeping that place and being a regular for England now, and he gets so much stick and he's so criminally underrated by the rest of the country. But I'm kind of at ease with that now. We know his value. We know how good he is. I just lose the enthusiasm or the energy to argue with other people. When other people say the stereotypical, he's only good for England, I just don't even entertain the conversation anymore because we all know how great he is. We all know. And I think as well, alluding back to what I said about Baines, he just seems like a really down-to-earth lad. He's from that part of the world where it's working class. It's about, family orientated, that type of thing. And he seems to be really grounded in his ways. And he's got like a young family now. And when the videos of him, when he's enjoying himself, he's not like in Dubai or one of these places like flashy with Instagram and all his cars or whatever. He just seems like just a regular bloke who, again, you could have a bevy with. So for that reason as well, yeah, I think I had to go for him. Really, I think he's a wonderful goalkeeper, and if he ever does leave Everton, I think we'll have the same trouble as what we had when Southall left. I think it'd be very hard to replace a permanent number one of real quality.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? I think the keeper's it's one of those positions where it's like arguably the most vital position on the park because it's that specialist. But if you need to reinforce other parts of the team, the keeper, you'll generally go for a lesser keeper, maybe get a better midfielder. It's a weird way it's looked at. But just to pick up on what you said, like about him and his character, and I've never looked at it this way before. He's a completely different player to the one we signed now. He's a completely different character. He's grown up loads, like you said. But yeah, I think you're right. There are similarities with Leighton Baines there, not in like the sort of the character of them, just it seems like their approach to the game, like you say, they're very grounded fellas. You don't see them doing anything flash particularly, but you can see that both of them have worked really, really hard right through the career to be the best they possibly can. Like Leighton Baines clearly did. And then, when he thought he was on the way, he retired because he thought, I can't can't keep up this level. I can't get any better. So he bowed out, which is fair enough. And I think, Pickford's doing the same, isn't he? He's constantly got better and better and better. He's
He
only
really
30.
has.
So, he's got another good 7, 8 years in him potentially. Hopefully, albeit Everton.
Hopefully with us, yeah, and hopefully he's still playing at the top level. Yeah, I do. I think he's been unfortunate that he's played in an Everton team that's been as woeful as it has. Because I think if we was playing in a top side or a very good Everton team now, we'd see the value of him. I mean, not that we don't, of course we all do, but I just think
Yeah.
in years to come, we probably won't value him as high as some of our other, legends or great players or icons down the past. And we should do. We absolutely should do, because yeah, I just think he's a wonderful, wonderful goalkeeper. And to what you said as well, I think he's certainly matured. He's definitely improved, and there's still room to improve as well, which is the great thing, because he's already a fantastic goalkeeper and there's room to get better.
Yeah. And when he retires, if we don't do it anyway, I'll be starting a petition to get a statue of him and Van Dijk outside the new ground. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Right, moving away from the Toffees momentarily. This is the borrowed part of the show. So basically, everyone was saying Manny Fernandez basically for the favourite loan player, and the same names kept coming up. So I thought, you know what, I better change this. So instead of your favourite loan player, I've gone with just any player you would love to have seen play for Everton at some point. You've got a couple of choices. So do you want to give us your first one?
Yeah, well, before I do, I tried, because we were messaging earlier, weren't we, before we started, and I said to you, oh, Les, you've thrown me a bit with this one, because I had Landon Donovan in mind straight away for the lone player, which I know that everyone's used as well, another one everyone's used. And I was trying to think, what the rule I gave to myself was, it's got to be a realistic signing. So, of course, I could have said Zidane, of course, I could have said whoever,
Yeah.
but that would never have happened. Because for me, I know a lot of people say about Messi, Ronaldo, and all that, but for me, Zidane's the greatest player I've ever seen. I just thought he was absolutely sensational. But of course, I would have said that. But I tried to be realistic with it. So I'll give you my first one. My first one, I think, probably in his prime, he wouldn't have realistically joined us, but it's somebody who it's probably he's probably the most favourable or talks really well about Everton for someone out of all the pundits out there that never played for us. He probably talks the most up about us, and it's Ian Wright. And there was a spell after he left Arsenal where he was in a bit of limbo, and I think he joined West Ham in the end. And at that point in our club's history, we were again, quite predictably down there. I think we just survived the 98 season going down. We were in the 98-99 season where Smith came in, and we made a couple of signings, and it was starting to look up a little bit. But we, again, like it always is with us financially, we couldn't really compete. And I remember him leaving Arsenal, and there was talk of him going on a free, and he was never rumoured to come with us. But I just thought, what a player that would be to have, like an icon of the Premier League in those early years, someone who knows where the back of the net is. And we'd never really had a prolific goal scorer at Everton. I know we talked about Duncan earlier, and we had a few other strikers. Franny Jeffers was coming through, and
Tony Cotton was probably the last one, wasn't he? To be honest.
Yeah, but even then he was never. I mean, he was... certainly when I was first started getting into football, he was never a sort of a 15, 20 goal a season player. And if you remember back then, Les, in the 90s, some clubs had two players who scored 20, 25, 30. And there was always like a long list of players who were in 20, 25 goals in the top scorers thing. And it doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. But back then it was like you could name with two hands the amount of quality strikers in terms of goal scoring. And there was, and Ian Wright was one of them. And I just thought it'd be great to have somebody who, would be quite fun to watch, knows where the back of the net has come from, a team that has been, in Europe, won the league, won the FA Cup, knows how to win. And I just thought he would have been a great signing for us. And since then, I know he's really favourable about how he talks about Everton. He really rates us as a club, and he speaks very highly of us. And also on that, I listened to the show you did with Pete, and I know Pete was talking a lot about the Everton women's team and women's football. And I think Ian Wright is an absolutely magnificent advocate for the women's game. He really does push it, and he's just I just think he's a really from the other point of view as well. I think he's one of those players, even though he didn't play for you, he's one of them. Everyone likes him. Maybe not Spurs fans, but you know what I mean? Everyone likes Ian Wright because he's just just a fantastic bloke. And again, probably I've got a bit of a theme going here, haven't I? I pick people who probably go for
Just
the
nice
Premier League.
fellas, just like yourself, mate. That's
Yeah.
all it is.
But yeah, I would have loved to have seen him at Everton. Even though he was probably a bit past his best, I still think he could have bagged for us and maybe got a few, supported the younger players, should we say? But we probably A, didn't have the finances, and B, it was probably never anything concrete in any way. But yeah, would have
But yeah,
loved him.
if you look at his goal scoring record after leaving Arsenal, though, he got 9 and 22 for West Ham,
Mm,
5 and 10 for Forest on loan, 3 and 8 for Celtic, and 4 and 15 for Burnley.
yeah,
So, look, as his career sort of tailed off there, he's still banging in a good number
yeah.
of goals per game there.
Well, that West Ham team he was in as well. It was, I think they had Joe Cole and Lampard and
Oh
Ferdinand
yeah,
coming through.
yeah.
And I think a lot of them have credited the fact that some of the senior pros at the time in that dressing room, like your Ian Wright, Neil Ruddock, a couple of other players, they said it was just brilliant for them in terms of looking after them and that sort of thing. And I think there's a lot of mileage to get out of veteran players in your dressing room and what they can do and what they can provide. And yeah, I would have loved to have seen him, but there we go. As long as he
And
still talks well about us, I'll take that for now.
I think the reason he might talk well about Everton is because he had such a good time against us. 13 goals in 17 games against us. He got
Yeah, and he
incredible.
was he got it was a bit like Les Ferdinand, wasn't it? Always scored against us, but he's gone on record himself as saying that he always gets treated well by Everton fans, and he feels the respect of the Everton fans. So again, when anyone talks well about us, we're gonna we're gonna gravitate towards them, aren't we? But yeah,
Oh,
good fella, Ian Wright.
your other choice for this one then?
Yeah, so
I'm going to
so
say
we
more mercurial, probably, isn't he, than Ian Wright?
I love a maverick player. I think football nowadays, the modern game, it's too rigid. It's too, you have to play this way. Players are overcoached. There doesn't seem to be that street footballer anymore. There doesn't seem to be that one who just, I know the game's changed and society's changed, but these maverick footballers you hear about from the 70s, 80s, and 90s who, uh, they were just fun and they were just fun to watch and they played the game for fun. And that's what it should be. It's a sport, yeah, and it's all about winning. I get that, but it's entertainment as well, and you want to be entertained. And this, there's a few players I was considering and thought of, particularly in the early 90s, mid 90s, who people like Janino and people like Gianfranco Zola, people like Ravanelli, I even thought of, who was close to joining us as well. And these were all players who were Mavericks. And I think this is probably the selection I've gone for is probably the last of the modern day Mavericks. So there maybe might be a few more come through now. Balotelli might be one, but this is a real true Maverick, and it's Berbatov. I thought Dimitar Berbatov was an exceptional footballer, again, criminally underrated. And probably because his style didn't really fit in with the English Premier League style of the hustle and bustle, quick, direct, get it quickly. But what a player! Like his touch and his skill. And he always, I remember an interview he gave once, and he said it was the Chelsea Tottenham 4-all. And the ball come to him in the last kick, and I think Tottenham were 4-1 or 4-2 down, or something. He got it back to 4-2. And it's come to him, and Martin Tyler's on commentary, and Martin Tyler's going mad, screaming, Berbatov, Berbatov, Berbatov. And he has a shot, and Kudicini saves it for Chelsea. So they interviewed him years later, and he's like, oh, what would it have been like if he's gone? He said, that's the most angry I've ever been with myself after the game. And you're like, why? Like, you played amazing, you scored 2 goals, you got back in the game. He said, if you look at all my goals, they're all like tap-ins, or not tap-ins, sorry, but I've caressed the ball, I've passed it into the
Yeah.
net. He said, I don't know why. He said, but that shot, I've blasted it into Kudicini. He said, if I'd have just rolled it over and we would have won the game. And that was his whole attitude. Like, I'd rather pass than score. I'd rather it hit the crossbar and go in than score, a goal off my backside. And I'd rather find someone with a 40-yard pass than and I just love that. I love a maverick in a team. And I think every team needs one, at least. You can't obviously have 11 of them, but it's something that Everton have lacked for a while.
Yeah.
Probably since, and we couldn't go in the ground to see him, but probably since James Rodriguez, if we had a player that creatively and it's just different, just not not the same, or not the usual, just something that offers something a bit different, that's excitable. And I go back to when I was a kid, and what gets you excited when you watch football as a kid? I mean, for me, I used to always love watching when Football Italia used to be on Channel 4, and you'd see all these wonderfully exotic name footballers doing all these skills, and the Del Piero and original Ronaldo and Beppe Signori and all these amazing, and you'd be like, oh, like I want to play like them. And nowadays it just seems that it's so formulaic and there's not
Yeah.
really many of them left. So I do love a maverick player who just offers something different. And I think his touch, his presence on the field, his hat-trick against Liverpool, by the way, for United. I mean, anyone who does that against Liverpool is going to go up in our estimation. So what a cracking player. And yeah, I wish there was more players like him, and I wish we had a player like him as well.
And yeah, like you said, like we said before about like left-footed players, there's something magical about them. When a player's that laid back and that good, James Rodriguez was the same. Really, it looked effortless.
Mm,
Berbatov was exactly the same. I don't think he ever broke into a sprint. He wasn't one of those
no.
players. And as you said, he caressed the ball in instead of
Mm,
blasting it. There's one that lobby scored for Monaco
yeah.
where he's just sort of just inside the corner of the area and he looks up and just lobs it over the keeper with no effort. It looks like a training ground thing, but if you can get a player who can do that on the pitch, not just on the training ground, you've got something special there, haven't you?
Absolutely. You can imagine him being fun to play with as well. You know,
Yeah,
and you probably know he's one of them players. If you give him the ball, he'll give you it back. He'll find it. Or if you give him the ball, you know you're not going to lose it. You know you're going to keep possession. And again, carrying on with the theme in a different kind of way to Baines and Pickford and Ian Wright. I'd like to go for a bevy with him. I think he'd be interesting.
he would be. Yeah, he definitely would be. I think he'd have to start smoking as well, though.
Yeah, yeah. I'd have to wear a leather
Yeah,
jacket or something, wouldn't I? Or
yeah,
yeah, I'd have to do something like that. Yeah.
definitely. Right, we'll move on to your final one then. So this is the blue category. This is your favourite Evertonian or your favourite thing about Everton. Got a couple for this as well?
Yeah, so I'll start off with my favourite thing about Everton. It's the ground. Goodison's all I've known and all we've all known, obviously, but I think there's just something really special about it. And I know that's possibly cliche to say, and I know it's romanticism, but from that first moment when you walk in as a kid, and I think all our memories stem from when we're kids and what
Yeah.
shapes us, obviously. But I remember just walking in and seeing the ground and just being fascinated by the fans, like watching the fans. Like, when I was young, just watching the fans standing up every time it was an attack or and hearing the rumbling of seats. And just the walk up from whatever angle you go, from whatever angle you enter Goodison and the atmosphere on County Road on a match day and just the sights, the sounds, the chat, yeah, just everything about it. And I'm probably in the very few minority that wishes we were still staying there. I know it won't help us push on as a club, but I think there's going to be a lot of tears the day we leave, and rightly so. It's a special place, and it's more than just a football ground. And what I mean by that is we all have got family members that we've shared stuff with. We've all got mates we've shared stuff with, and it's all come through Everton.
Yeah.
It'll lead me on to my second answer in a minute, but it'll lead me on to sorry, it all comes back to Everton, and that's going to be lost to a degree
Yeah.
when we move. Because
Yeah,
it's come.
no, go on.
I was just saying that's going to be lost because you've got to find something new or a new routine in the new ground, and you're all of a sudden going to feel a little bit uncomfortable.
Mm.
We all know we need to move. We all know it's going to be a stunning ground, but it's for me, it's never going to be Goodison. And for all its imperfections, it's perfect.
Yeah.
The sitting behind a pole or sitting behind, one of the stands where you can't see, and you've got to turn your neck and bend your neck. For all like the tightness of it, how it's a lot of the seats are wooden, how you know the park end is this, and it's the main stand could do with piping up a bit more, and the Gladys and some of the smells you get from the Gladys Street, the little chippies and stuff like that when you go out, just everything about it, Les. I just adore the place, and I've said it before on this show, but we've really got to make the most of it this year, every single game, because it's going to hit us like a ton of bricks when we leave. It's going to get very real very quickly. And like I said, well, it'll be what, 31 years it'll be this November since my first game. And that's 31 years of my life, the following, and a big part of my life, it's got to be said, that's going to be gone. Um, so yeah, it's Goodison. Goodison for me embodies everything. to do with Everton.
Yeah.
It all starts there. That's like, if you like, again, it sound a bit cliche, but that's the church, that's the cathedral, which everything grows out from. Your mates, your this, your that, your routine, everything. But it starts at Goodison, and yeah, wonderful, wonderful ground. And you can hear it probably in my voice now. The tone I'm taking, it's going to be horrible the day we leave. Horrible.
Yeah, it just made me realise that it's 40 years in August since my first game.
Mm.
Heavy that.
I know when you start working it out like that in terms of years and
Okay,
games
it's
you've
mad,
been
isn't it?
to, it's
And
it's scary.
that's the thing, you can't underestimate how big a part being there and
Mm.
going to the ground, like you say, the chippies and everything, the shops around the ground, visiting those places, walking down those roads around Goodison, going in those entrances, being in that ground, you can't underestimate how much a part of just your whole like being an Evertonian is
Mm.
encapsulated in that. It's kind of everything. It's kind of the club to a degree, and it's going to be really difficult to move that to a new ground.
Mm.
A lot of clubs have done it. A lot of clubs have struggled when they've gone to a new ground, and I think that's because it is so alien to everyone, and it's you definitely lose something, and I think it will take time to get that back. Obviously, if
Yeah.
we get success straight away, that'll make it easier. But if we are pretty lackluster on the pitch, that will make it all the more difficult to sort of get any sort of feeling in that new ground. And it's a big risk, isn't it?
It is. It's something we've talked ad nauseum that we've got to do. We have to move to be a player in in the modern game. We have to be in a new stadium. And look, I've seen pictures again of it today, and it looks incredible. But I just, yeah, there's just a unique quality about Goodison, and whereas every ground now is not the same, because our new ground's quite unique as well. But it's a throwback, isn't it? And I know this gets said by pundits and commentators all the time, but I love that I sit in there, Les, and players before I was even born scored in there. Alan Ball played there, Dixie Dean played there,
Yeah.
Mick Lyons played there, Bob Latchford played there. These like over incredible names from our past of Howard Kendall won the league title there with two Everton teams. The Bayern Munich game, which I sadly wasn't old enough, wasn't even born to witness, was there. And it holds a lot of memories, and that adds to the aura of the place as well, and it adds to the character, it adds to the atmosphere, it adds to everything. And I've always said about Everton fans and Evertonians, when we're not on it, it's like it's not a great ground to be in. It's not because it's
Yeah.
quiet. It's you know it's reserved. It's not particularly fun. But when we need to light that ground up, and when we need to be a force, God, it's a pleasure to be in there when it's like that. I think back to, I wasn't at the Palace game at the time, but I know the Palace game people talk about, the Bournemouth game, that last game of the season when we stayed up. And then some of the games we've had down the years as well. I mean, there's been loads of moments here and there. The Yelovich one against Man City, for instance, the ground took off that day. The Man United 3-all when Arteta scored the last kick. I mean, the noise when that went in, you wouldn't have thought it was 38,000. You would have thought it was double that. And there's not many grounds that could. And also as well, I mean, do you know what is going to be hard? I'm sure there will be some elements of this, but it's going to be hard to recreate a moody Goodison at Bramley Moore. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
when the ground is moody and snarling, I don't think there's a more intimidating ground in the country. I really don't. I've been to loads of ways, as of yourself, and there's days when the ground's against the referee, or they're against their own team, or they're not happy or whatever. I don't feel intimidated, but when when we're moody and snarling and it's a night game, or the game's in the winter when it starts getting dark by around about 4 o'clock, oh, it's yeah, special place.
It is. And that is made up of the people, obviously, which leads on to your last thing.
Yeah, you'd ask me, or well, one of the questions on the show is who's your favourite Evertonian, and I could sit here and reel off countless players who have made the club great. I could reel off famous fans. I still love Dave's John Parrott answer, by the way. He was a great Evertonian. Don't get me wrong, John Parrott, fantastic fella, great Evertonian. Um, but I tried to think of what when I was thinking of this question, I tried to think of what makes Everton more special rather than just what's on the pitch. And like I said earlier in the show, I was down south a lot of my formative years, and although I made the odd game up and travelled up to see the odd game, I missed out on making them mates from school who go the match, or I could go the match with, or missed out on having that regular match day feel, if you like. And when I first came back up, I knew a few people, I didn't really know many people. And I used to just go to the match on my own. And when I was at uni, I was working. So I went to uni in Jill in Ormskirk, and I was working behind the bar one day in one of my part-time jobs in one of the pubs there. And fella walks in, and we get chatting. And anyway, he finds out I'm an Evertonian, and not his first question isn't, where'd you sit or who's your favourite player, nothing like that. His first question was, like any true Evertonian, where'd you drink before the match? And I said, oh, I don't. I said, I told them backstory and whatever. So don't, and said, come with us, come and have a pint with us on a Saturday if you're stuck for something. You seem like a good lad. I take me cousin's lads, and they come and we all have a drink on a Saturday for them. I said, I'll do that. So I met up with them the following Saturday, and 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is later, our little group made friends with another little group, and then another little group made friends. So it turns out now, whenever we go to the pub on a Saturday, we go to the Black Horse on Saturday, everyone all knows each other. And it all started really from that, from what, 2008-ish, 2009. And that grew into, I made a load of mates going to the aways as well, and still, and we're all in WhatsApp groups and whatever now. And then that led me into being involved with the Blue Room and getting to know yourself and other people involved in the Blue Room. And I can honestly say that that's just a bigger part of Everton is what the football is. I've said this before, but I've been invited to christenings, birthdays, um, you know, holidays, stag do's, whatever it is, you name it. I've been to family events of me mates who I've known through Everton, and if it wasn't for our football club, I wouldn't know them. So that for me is what it's all about. It's so important that we're a good football team, and it's so important that we enjoy the football on the pitch, but the social elements of it is so vital. And I think that's what COVID taught us. When we lost that, I think we
Yeah.
realised how much it meant. And Everton's Gary Neville says, doesn't he? He imagines all the terraced houses round by Goodison. He imagines everyone who lives there goes to the game and then goes home afterwards. And obviously that's not true, but there is an element of that mentality to us. We're all very, you don't meet an Evertonian, or you very rarely meet an Evertonian, Les, who isn't passionate. And what I mean by that is, like, down here now, you start seeing the Man City shirts because Man City are winning things. You start seeing the Liverpool shirts, you see the Arsenal shirts, but you ask them about the history of the clubs they support, and they haven't got a clue. They just know the here and now because they're winning. But you ask an Evertonian about something that happened in 1997, and they'll reel off the team, or oh, he was terrible, that Klaus Thompson, wasn't he? And that's what I love about us. It's almost like we're sharing the same, like, anguish together, and we're stronger for it. I don't know. I don't know what I'm really saying, but it just
No, I know what
means
you
a
mean. I
lot.
know exactly what
Do
you
you know what I
mean.
mean? It's like because you've got
Yeah.
this shared thing, and when it does go well, there's no greater feeling than being with your mates. I mean, God, the Chelsea, just to go off on a little bit of tangent, Chelsea in the FA Cup replay that year when we won on penalties, I went down on the train, and all the lads who I know, we were all going down. I've never had a day like it, and you sort of, you say to yourself, do you know what? I'll put up with the countless amounts of misery just to have a couple of days like that, because it just makes it all worthwhile being with your mates and enjoy. And you speak to anyone, say we get to Wembley or something, everyone always says, well, yeah, it's great, but it's about being with my mates. And so I've got to give the long-winded answer to this. You know me, Les, I've got to give a long-winded answer to something. The long-winded answer is the greatest Evertonians are my mates, and the people who go to the game, and the people I've had the pleasure of sharing watching our great football club with, yourself and others down the years. It's been great, and I just hope that we keep that. I'm sure we will, but I hope we keep that togetherness and that bond when we move to the new ground, and we adjust quickly, because I think that's important, because a lot of the psyche of our football club is the supporters. And we're not like other clubs where we rely on, finances, or we're not a super club like a Real Madrid is, or they're just concerned about people coming through the door, numbers coming through the door, numbers on the balance sheet. We're very concentrated on supporters who've been there, thick and thin, young, old, and I think that's a really vital thing for us, and one that will ultimately one day hopefully make us successful, is the supporters. So yeah, to go off the tangent, greatest Evertonians to me are my mates.
That is a lovely moment. Couldn't be more about it. It's just so nice having loads of Evertonian mates, and just having mates outside of the game, like the game. It is a wonderful thing. As much as we like, we moan about Everton and stuff, to have that is just it's just the nicest feeling in the world. It's a lovely note to it. That one, nice one.
Nice one. Thank you for
Anyone
having me
wants to
on.
get
Yeah.
involved, give me a shout on Twitter at LesRobert77 or leave a comment on YouTube. That was Warren on Old New Borrowed Week. We'll be back with someone else next week. Not sure who yet, but thanks for listening. The Toffees.